Hello, Audrey.
Good morning.
Morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Right. We'll get started in just a minute.
Okay.
Give everyone another minute or two, and then we'll get started.
Sounds good. All right. I think I'm gonna have to. This slide.
All right. Well, I'll get started as people come in. So good morning, everyone. My name is Audrey Miller, and I am the program manager for the Colorado Small Business Development Center Network's SBDC Tech Source Commercialization Program. Quite a mouthful. Um, and I would like to welcome you all this morning here to learn more about the National Science Foundation's SBIR STTR programs. So very excited. Before we get started, just want to share a little bit of information about, our program. So the Colorado SBDC Tech Source Commercialization Program is designed to support science and technology ventures throughout the state. Businesses are typically pre-startup through advanced second stage. So if you have an innovative technology, you're likely a fit for our program, regardless of what stage your business is at. Our program focuses especially on sources of non-dilutive capital, technology commercialization, and SBIR, STTR grants, which is why, you're all here today, of course. We also cover topics like R&D tax credits, government accounting, IP protection, access to capital, market research, all of those fun things. So we provide customized expert consulting at no cost to you, as well as relevant workshops, events, and accelerator programs. After this webinar, if you're at all interested in meeting one-on-one with an SBDC tech source specialist, attending any of our future events, workshops, or webinars, we do have a few more webinars coming up with other government agencies on their SBIR STTR programs as well. Definitely check out our website, which is sbdc-techsource.org. You can kind of get started on all of that. So we're very fortunate to have support from the SBA's FAST program, the Colorado Office of Economic Development, International Trade in the city of Boulder, and which makes these costs, makes these programs at no cost, to the individuals we work with. So we're very fortunate of that. If you're outside of the state of Colorado, though, we definitely encourage you to check out your local SBDC and resources for your individual state. So before we get started, if you have any questions throughout the session, please feel free to type them in the Q&A feature that you can see on Zoom this morning. And we'll have time for the Q&A at the end. I'd like to get started and introduce our guest today, Dr. Henry Ahn. So he is here with the National Science Foundation to come and talk to you about as the SBIR STTR program director. So and I'll kind of pass it over to you to continue to introduce yourself, stop sharing my
All right.
screen, and let you get started.
All right. Thank you, Audrey. All right. So I guess I'll have to start sharing my screen here. So make sure that this is set up properly. I have two screens here, so if I look like I'm looking the other way, I'm looking at my other screen. So again, my name is Henry Ahn. I'm one of the program directors here at NSF, working with the SBIR STTR program. I handled the biomedical technologies topic for our program, but I'll be talking about our program in general and a little bit of emphasis on biomedical technology since that's a topic that I handle. I'll be spending about the next half an hour or so going through these slides, and we should have plenty of time to go through any questions that you may have. All right, let's go to the next slide here. So NSF is primarily a funding agency. We have our annual budget of just under $10 billion. And we don't have any internal research. We do a lot of proposal reviews and funding projects, mainly basic research from university setting, as well as translational research. So annually, about 39,000 proposals that we review, and of those proposals, about 1,800 institutions are funded, which does include about 300 to 400 startups that we fund annually under the SBIR STTR program. So back in March of 2022, there was an announcement about NSF establishing a new directorate, TIP directorate, Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships. It's old news now, but it was a really big deal when it happened back in 2022, because this was the first directorate that was established within NSF in the last 30 years or so. And with that, we wanted to do a better job of promoting translational research. So basic research is still very important for NSF. So we do fund all the basic research that we've been funding over the years. But with this establishment of new directorate, TIP directorate, we wanted to do a better job promoting translational research and having some sort of societal impact and helping with the economic competitiveness within the country. So there are many variations of this slide, so I'm sure you have seen some variation of this, a slide that shows the valley of death in the middle. Public funds on the left side is where usually universities are funded under some sort of public grant to do research. And sometimes these technologies do get spun out and a startup gets created. And then with that, on the right side is where the private funds come in. Once the technology matures a bit, there are some for-profit investors, private investors, angel investors, and venture capitalists who will come in hoping to fund these projects, or companies hoping to capitalize on their technology and the team and get some form of return on their investment. So the purpose is mainly to make money. But in the middle, where the valley of death resides, that's where many of the startups die because of lack of cash flow. At this stage, technologies are not perhaps vetted enough or de-risked enough for these private investors to be interested. But at the same time, companies do have to make additional progress to get to that point. So all of our new programs within our TIP directorate are designed to kind of bridge that gap as much as possible. So sort of like a bridge between the public funds and private funds. And we kind of think of this as the ramp of opportunity to support companies and technologies that are early stage so that they can continue to grow beyond the money that we can provide. The SBIR STTR program is the only program within NSF that is specifically designed to support for-profit companies. So you have to be a for-profit company to be able to apply for this fund. And again, this SBIR STTR program is the only program that has that requirement within NSF. SBIR program requires that at least 2/3 of the total budget to be allocated to the company that's applying for funding. STTR requires at least 30% of the budget to be allocated to the university partner. So it requires a university partner with that program, and at least 40% of the budget has to be allocated to the company that's applying for funding. So although SBIR program does not require a university partner, you can potentially have a university partner. The SBIR program, as long as you have at least 2/3 of the total budget allocated to the company, that's all that's needed. For the purpose of reviewing our proposals, we do treat them the same. These are for-profit companies, so if there are some significant concerns, concerns as for-profit entities. That generally is the case for both, whether it's SBIR or STTR. So one thing that we emphasize with our reviewers is that this funding is for for-profit companies, so we do treat them the same. It's just the company that's applying for funding, it's their decision to come in as an SBIR company or an STTR company, and it really does not have much. It does not have any funding award rate that's different. So the SBIR, the qualifications for SBIR, STTR, to be eligible for SBIR and STTR, it has to be a for-profit entity with fewer than 500 employees. I mean, that's still huge, but that's the federal definition of a small business concern, fewer than 500 employees. But as you'll see in the next few slides, NSF's emphasis is on startups, so that would still be considered too big. But this is just to be eligible for this SBIR STTR program, and this would be the same across all agencies, all 11 federal agencies that offer SBIR STTR. The company has to be located in the US, and it has to be at least 51% owned by individuals in the US, meaning either US citizens or permanent residents. So this is our phase one awardee stats. As you can, for the past several years. So as you can see, although the federal definition of a small business concern is fewer than 500 employees, about 95% of our phase one awardees had 10 or fewer employees. So these are all very early stage companies who were founded in the last 5 years. 81% of them were founded in the past 5 years. Almost 60% of these companies were first-time SBIR, STTR winners. And this is not just within NSF. This is across all agencies. They're receiving grant for the first time, generally the first money in. And NSF generally doesn't do multiple phase ones. So that just generally means that we want to be the first to come in, help companies to de-risk the technology, have them move on to potentially transition to a phase two project, and then the supplements beyond that, our hope is that these companies will be able to grow through private investment and strategic partners. Hopefully, the technology is de-risked sufficiently for them to be able to raise some money to be able to continue to grow. And this is some statistics related to our portfolio companies. This is data from looks like from October 2016 through September 2022. And of our portfolio companies, these companies have raised about $20 billion in follow-on equity financing. And there have been 300 successful exits. It's mostly through acquisitions, but we've also had some IPOs as well. Yes, and this is some statistics related to the different topics. And NSF is more or less technology agnostic, so we do fund technologies across all areas. And this slide may be a little misleading because it does say 28% of life sciences. It just happens that for this data, it is a little bit old, but fiscal year 2020, when we received all the proposals, we happened to receive many more proposals under life sciences category. And when we funded all the ones that we wanted to fund, it happened that life sciences companies made up of about 28% of all of the funded companies. But as you can see, we have these different technologies. We even have 3% of other topics. These are companies working on technologies that may not be easily categorized into one of the categories that are mentioned. So this particular year, we had $221 million obligated, and that includes about $31 million in supplements. And again, NSF, our emphasis is to fund innovation, I guess people refer to as deep technologies, technical innovation that have commercial and societal impact. And we award, I think our annual budget right now is roughly between $250 and $260 million. So about $250 million in R&D money for roughly 400 startups in the United States. Again, and our emphasis is on startups and very early stage companies. So, and we fund projects in phases. Companies that apply to NSF for the first time, they have to apply for phase one first, which goes up to $275,000. It's a 6 to 12 month project. These companies, after completing the phase one project, can potentially apply and transition to a phase two project, which is $1 million project, going up to 24 months. We have multiple funding, supplemental funding opportunities for phase two companies, and phase 2B just is the biggest one out of all of them. It's going up to $500,000. It's a matching fund. So as companies go out and raise money, sometimes it's third-party investment. Sometimes it's even revenue in some cases based on the NSF supported technology. We will match for every $2 that the company brings in, we'll match $1, going up to $500,000. And although this is the biggest supplement that we have, we do have other smaller supplements going up to about 20% of the phase two award, or even less. But when it's all said and done, it'll be, I think, roughly $2 million or so for startups. And our hope is that this will be sufficient to get the company to a point where they can continue to grow beyond the grant money. So that generally means after completing the phase two project and closing it out, we don't see these companies back for another phase one project. So I think you probably have heard through other agencies like DoD and NIH, some companies that are able to secure some multiple phase one awards, mainly because they're looking for specific type of technologies, and they happen to want to see the technology for a specific application. But NSF, our emphasis is on startups, so we're not looking for a specific type of technology, but we just want to be able to help de-risk the technology at this early stage so that they can continue to grow. So for that reason, we generally don't do multiple phase ones. This is our website. If you're thinking about submitting a proposal to NSF, this is probably the site that you should probably visit first, seedfund.nsf.gov. And it's a lot easier to get to this page by typing that URL as opposed to going through nsf.gov. It's a pretty big page, and then sometimes it's difficult to get to this page. On the upper right-hand corner, you can see the drop-down menu that says how it works. And that'll kind of walk you through the process. So with the project pitch process, various places that you need to register your business, the solicitation for our phase one proposal. And so it'll walk you through those process. So that's an important drop-down menu to visit. The other place that's going to be helpful is this resources tab in the middle. And it has some useful information for potential applicants. We have information for phase one and phase two awardees. We also have information for our reviewers. So all the review criteria and all the questions that our reviewers are asking themselves as they review your proposal, you'll be able to read them by visiting that reviewers tab. We also have a calendar of events. We generally have Q&A office hours just about every other week. So if you have any additional questions, you can feel free to come back, sign up, and then and attend one of these sessions. So how to get started? Project pitch submission happens first. So this should be the first step, and your project pitch does not have to be reviewed in any way. You can just go ahead and submit it. And we used to have people email us their abstract for some sort of comment or feedback or to assess their fit. But we don't have that anymore. We just have this website now, which does make things a lot easier. You just submit it under what you believe is the best fit. And what we do is we'll review, and if it's a better fit under another topic, we'll move it around. We'll move it to another topic if it's a better fit there. But within about a month or so, you will hear back, and you'll know whether there's a fit. Again, this is assessing for the fit, so we're not evaluating in any way. We just want to know, well, is the technology innovative? Is there a market potential for this technology? So if the answers are yes, then generally the company is invited to submit a full proposal. And by the time you hear back, you'll know exactly which topic that you'll be submitting your proposal under, and also the person to reach out to for specific questions that you may have. So, for example, all the project pitches that I review on technologies, I'll get back to them. It'll when I reply and invite companies, or even sometimes not invite them because there's not a good fit. My contact information will be there, and you can always reach out with any additional questions that you may have. Sometimes I do move the project pitch to another topic like medical devices or digital health or biological technologies or pharmaceutical technologies even. Because there are multiple bio-related topics. But again, other than submitting it under the topic that you believe is the best fit, don't worry about it. We'll take it from there, and you'll know when you hear back which topic would be the most appropriate. I did go over this, so approximately 1 month you'll hear back, and companies are generally limited to one project pitch per submission window. That means if you are declined with the project pitch for the current submission window, you won't be able to turn around and quickly submit another one. You'll have to wait until the next submission window opens. And our new solicitation, if you're invited to submit a full proposal, then you'll have to go through the solicitation guideline carefully to put together your full proposal and submit it through our website, research.gov. We don't have a new solicitation online yet. We've been waiting for this to happen for quite some time now, but it's not ready. Our current submission window actually ends tomorrow on May 15th. And hopefully soon after that, we will have a new submission window that'll open, and you'll know when the new solicitation goes live, and you can read all the changes. One thing that I would like to kind of recommend is once the new solicitation goes live, you may want to read, even if you've seen the old one, you may want to go through at least the first page, because the first page is going to have the list of all the major changes for that particular submission window compared to the previous one. So I think it'll be a good idea to go through and figure out what the changes are. Sometimes the total amount does change a little bit. There are sometimes certain changes that are worth noting before you submit a full proposal. Our review process generally takes about 6 months. The first 3 months, the proposal will go through a merit review. And our goal is to get to the final decision on funding within 6 months of the proposal submission. These are the review criteria that we use. Intellectual merit and broader impact are pretty much the same throughout NSF, whether it's academic research grant or SBIR grant for for-profit companies. Intellectual merit generally refers to the technical side of the proposal. Is the technology innovative? Is the team technically capable of conducting the work? Do they have access to the facility? What are the technical milestones? What are success criteria to go along with those milestones? And then do the timeline and the amount they're requesting make sense for the given project? Anything and everything that has to do with the technology side. Broader impact has to do with increasing economic competitiveness in the US, or having some form of societal benefit. And the commercial potential has to do with the business side. Because we work with for-profit companies, we have this third criterion, which is very different from the rest of NSF. It has to do with whether the company understands who the initial target market is, the size of that market, who the competitors are, significant competitive advantage, a regulatory path to market, the funding need. And I think when it's all said and done, it almost seems the full proposal is going to seem like a mini business plan. It's going to have some significant amount of commercial information as well as the technical information. So what do we fund? We fund innovative proprietary technology that the company may own and they're trying to develop and perhaps prove or get to feasibility so that they can continue to grow the business. These are all considered high technical risks. They're all at very early stage in development, and so high risk, I guess people call it high risk, high reward. So companies that are still trying to work things through um, at the early stage, um, although the game-changing technology, the term is used quite a lot in the market space, but it's easier said than done. When you really look at the technology, there are very few that may be considered game-changing or potentially disruptive type of technology. But it has to be some technology that addresses a specific need in the marketplace, and that's going to be important because the company has to be able to monetize from this. And I think iCore or some form of customer discovery interviews help address that need. But through these interviews, companies are often able to come in with much better understanding of the market need and whether it addresses the specific need for that intended target market. And in some ways, it shows that the market fit is validated by going through these interviews. What do we not fund? We don't do basic research under the SBIR program. Again, for NSF, basic research is still very important. You may have seen the picture of that black hole several years ago. This was a big deal within NSF because the majority of that work was funded through NSF grants. So although a project like that is still important for NSF, for SBIR STTR program, us focusing on translational research, something like that would be of less interest unless there's a way to potentially commercialize and monetize from this technology in the marketplace. Incremental improvement to an existing product is also of less interest to NSF. If you've already developed a specific type of technology, a platform for a specific application, you want to see if it'll work for another application. Perhaps it's just an incremental improvement to what you may have already developed, and it becomes less interesting to NSF. We want to be able to help you to achieve that first stage of addressing the need for your initial intended market as opposed to the secondary or tertiary market. And these are all for-profit companies, so there has to be some form of commercial application and commercial need for the type of technology. And all the money that we provide are pretty much going to R&D work. So the money is not used for market research or anything that's non-technical, considered non-technical work. So here are some important elements and some things that I've seen probably more frequently than others throughout the years reviewing these proposals with reviewers. The technology, there has to be enough evidence that the technology has potential to work. So for phase one companies, technically supporting data is not a requirement, but there has to be enough evidence. It could be based on a theory, it could be based on other people's work. There has to be something there that says the potential is there for this technology to work. Understanding the initial target market and the need and the commercialization strategy for that intended market is also important. And I see a lot where when a company is developing a platform, they'll just propose to develop this general platform without any specific target market. Those proposals generally are not seen as very strong because you have to be able to talk about your initial target market, why it's so important for that market, what the size of that market might be, and why it's considered so much better than other solutions that may exist. So even if your technology is a platform, you do have to have an initial target market that makes sense. Intellectual property and the strength of the IP protection is also important. For most of the companies that I see under the biomedical technologies topic, that generally means a patent protection of some sort. But I know some other topics, especially in the software space, it may not mean a patent protection, but there has to be something there that says you will be able to protect whatever you have in the long run and be successful. You know, if there's money to be made, there will be others coming trying to do the same thing. How will you prevent those people from entering the market space? How will you compete and how will you come out ahead? So, you know, whatever protection that you have in the form of protection that you may have, you have to be able to talk about your intellectual property and how it's protected and what this might mean for the company going forward. The significant advantage has to be there, and the regulatory path to market, if it applies for biomedical technologies companies, that's important to discuss. Although this may not be something that you have to worry about until later on, you do have to be able to at least show that you understand the path, and depending on the path that you have to take, the amount of money that you'll have to raise may be a little different. Maybe there are certain technical work that you have to be engaged with now that'll help you move in that right direction. So having that understanding, we do believe that that's going to affect some of your current activities. So that's why it's so important to present, you know, what it is that which path that you have to take and what this might mean for the company. So we understand that to get a product FDA cleared, for example, you just have to show that it's just as effective as what may already be on the market. But again, that significant competitive advantage is going to be important because this is going to allow you to be able to compete and come out ahead. For phase one companies, we obviously don't expect the team to be complete. It's definitely not unusual for the company to be run by just one or two individuals. But I think for those companies that are just starting out, it's generally a good idea to have an advisory board. Wherever your experience may lack, you may want to have some advisors that you meet with on regular basis and discuss. So that I think it kind of adds additional assurance that perhaps as you move along the path, you'll minimize some of the mistakes along the way. And when you're financially capable to bring those additional expertise within your team, you can do that at a later time. But at least for now, you have some places that you can go or people that you can talk to receive the guidance that's needed to minimize your mistakes along the way. Since the money we provide is not a lot, you want to make sure that you can use the money efficiently and get to the point where you can continue to grow. The evidence that the demand exists, and support letters are helpful in this case, but I think in a lot of cases, when you do go through your customer discovery interviews like I-Core, and summarizing your findings will help you to do that, for that generate evidence. I see a lot of companies, sometimes they'll talk about their I-Core exercise that they've gone through. They may say something like, "We've done I-Core. We've interviewed 100 different people, and we've validated the need." And don't go beyond that. But if you have done that many interviews, it's probably a good idea to summarize a little bit what you found, who you may have interviewed, so that we understand the extent of work that you've done and how strong that feedback was for you to proceed with it. If you're declined for funding, it's generally helpful to prepare what we call a resubmission summary. But generally, when a proposal gets declined, there are these individual reviews and then a fourth document or fifth document called the panel summary. The panel summary is what the panel puts together as a group as a result of this panel discussion. So going through all the weaknesses that you see there and just responding for each of the weakness, how you've addressed those weaknesses that were identified previously. And no more than one page for the full response. So there's not a lot of room, but you can just provide a high-level picture of how you've addressed them. And that gets uploaded as a supplemental document when you submit again your proposal again. So this doesn't count against the 15-page limit, but it gives the reviewers an idea as to what the issues were and that you've addressed them. And the reason that this is important is because although our reviewers will know that you've gone through and you were declined previously, they don't have access to any of your previous submission or reviews that may have been done. On the cover page, you have to check off and say that you've gone through the process before and you were declined. So sometimes our reviewers will look for this one pager And if you've addressed those concerns, you're kind of starting the review process on a positive note. So your proposal is guaranteed to be a stronger submission than the previous one. Hopefully, it'll be strong enough to be funded, but we won't know until the panel discussion takes place and we get all the feedback from the review panel. All right, so that's all I have. Here's my contact information. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact me anytime. We'll go over your questions now, but if we can't get to your questions, just feel free to email me and I'd be happy to reply. Thank you. Stop sharing my screen.
Great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. That was a lot of really great
Sure.
information. Yeah, so we do have a number of questions. If you have additional, if you haven't already put your questions in the Q&A, please go ahead and do so as we kind of go through and answer some of those now. So the first question we have is TIP funds reserved for startups that came out of universities and or were prior recipients of NSF research funding?
No, I mean, they're not reserved for that specifically, but I think one thing that I've seen is that when a company spins out of a university, generally under some sort of public grant, they've gone through this research. So they generally do come in with a lot of supporting data, but definitely not reserved for university spinoffs. We do have plenty of companies that are coming in. They've developed their own technologies and applied for funding and received funding, but we don't have any division on how much gets allocated to the university spinoffs or how much of this money gets allocated to companies that have NSF lineage. But we'll just go through based on the merit review. We'll go through those questions that our reviewers will be asking on the technical side, business side, and the broader impact, and make a recommendation based on that.
Great. And then the next question we have is the meeting for phase one or for the initial application to allow you to apply to phase one?
Say that again. Meeting for phase one.
Yeah, or the initial application to allow you to apply to phase one. I'm not sure which meeting they're asking about.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, if you're asking if you need to apply for phase one to be able to apply for phase two, yes, that is the case. That if you can't just jump straight to a phase two project. I know NIH has some creative ways of accepting proposals where you have direct to phase two and other variety, but for NSF, you do have to apply for phase one. After completing your phase one project, you'll have to apply for phase two.
Perfect. And then the next question was about the submission windows and asking how often do those submission windows open?
Yeah, so we've had, I believe, 3 submission windows last year. So this year it became a little tricky because back in November, when our submission window closed, we realized that our new solicitation was not ready to go because every year, every fiscal year, or calendar year, we do have a new solicitation that goes out with the description of all the submission windows. So when that happened, we didn't want to have this big gap between the end of the submission window to the start of the next one. So we extended the previous submission window until early January, and then we extended that until early March, and then it was extended again until May 15th. Hopefully, we won't have to extend the submission window anymore. Hopefully, our solicitation will be ready to go. Our hope is that it'll be ready to go sometime later this month, so that you'll have all the details related to the new submission windows within that solicitation.
Perfect. And they can always find that, like most of that information too, on the website as well, correct?
Yeah, our website will have all the latest details.
Perfect. I know there was another question I had responded back to somebody else asking about other SBIR other agencies' windows. And so yeah, each agency does do their own window and timeline differently. So definitely encourage everyone to check out the websites of the agencies that they're interested in, NSF, et cetera.
and each agency has different solicitations. So, I think that it's really important to keep in mind that a strong proposal to NSF, for example, is not going to translate to being a strong proposal to NIH or DoD. If you look at the solicitation guideline, you'll find that the information that you have to present are very different.
Yeah. All right, so we have two questions about IP, so I'm going to kind of ask them together because I think they kind of flow in. So, somebody asked about if they said if we don't currently have patents but plan to submit patent applications, how would that affect the strength of IP consideration? And then somebody asked, are provisional patents considered valid IP protection?
Yeah, and I think so. This may vary depending on the topic. So if you're a software company, then the answer may be a little different. But uh, at least from coming in from the biomedical technologies perspective, I think if you have some important IP that you need to protect, it's going to be very important to have at least taken the steps to protect that IP, which means at least filing a provisional patent application. And on top of that, I mean, as you know, provisional patent application really doesn't mean much. I mean, you just file the paperwork, but it'll be even more important to just have some brief description within the full proposal, what you believe, what aspect of the intellectual property that you believe are protectable under patents. You may have done some prior art search and or have some had discussions with a patent attorney. So that detail is probably going to be more important than whether you filed something or not. But at minimum, if there's something important to protect, at least taking that step to file a provisional patent application is going to be important. If you don't need to file a patent application to be able to compete and come out ahead, and then you'll just have to explain exactly what that is. But if a proposal comes in and says, we expect to complete this phase 1 project, and as a result of this phase 1 project, we hope to be able to file a patent application, then it's probably going to be seen as probably a little, a bit weak, maybe a little too early, because the purpose of this SBIR program is not to help companies file patents, but it's to help them get to the next inflection point where they can continue to grow their business.
Perfect. And the next question we have is if we completed I-Corp for a different project, is it beneficial to say we've been through the program and we applied those customer discovery methods to this proposed project?
Yeah, I mean, if you've done that, if you've done your interviews, then you can certainly discuss your findings. But if you went through I-Corp for another type of project, just mentioning about that is probably not going to help you because that doesn't relate to your proposed project.
Perfect. And then how many people would you like to see on the advisory board?
I mean, there is no specific number that we have in mind generally. Yeah, I think it's important to have, you know, whichever area that the team lacks, I think it's always good to have somebody on the advisory board. Generally, that means having someone with, say, commercial expertise, the people with the commercialization experience. Sometimes that means having a regulatory expert on the field, depending, I mean, depending on what the situation is. But what makes it difficult is, I mean, there are a lot of different areas of expertise that the company may need to get the company moving. Not, I mean, this includes the business side, regulatory side, legal side, and everything else. But in addition to that, even on the technical side too, you may need engineering expert, plus biology expert, clinical expert. So all these things, I think it can add additional strength to your proposal. So wherever you feel that you lack in experience, if you can show that you have advisors that can fill that gap until you're able to bring somebody on board on full-time basis, it's going to help you to strengthen your case.
Great. And then somebody asked, there is a technical solution section in the application. Can you address what should go in that section for an educational software company?
Yes, I don't do educational software companies, so I wouldn't be able to address that specifically. But in general, technical section, you do have to talk about, you know, what your technology is, where the innovation lies, you know, what is the technical de-risking that you're trying to do. And whatever technical milestones that you're proposing to do with this $275,000 project, it has to help you to de-risk your technology. It can't just be, oh, I'm just going to write this program and it's going to do X, Y, and Z. You'll probably have to say, hey, I'm going to write this program because I need these features and they need to provide these type of success, well, what may be considered success criteria, what it may have to do. And if it doesn't work, what are some ways that you can mitigate the risk, and if you have any alternative plans, all those things need to be discussed. And whenever a device is being utilized, and we've also seen that when a company says we're going to build this device that does X, Y, and Z, people want to know, well, does the company know what it takes to build that device? Do they have some do they have some idea as to what the device might look like, the dimension of the device? So I think the more detail that you can provide, I think it'll always come out stronger.
Perfect. And then how important is the scale of the commercial potential? Is a product that leads to $2 million revenue scored lower than 10 million?
Yeah, so this is where things get a little tricky. So, one thing that I tell people is that we're not VCs, so we're not looking for a multi-billion-dollar market opportunity. But at the same time, these are for-profit companies that we're supporting. So if you are asking for $2 million from NSF to be able to generate $2 million, is that going to be sufficient to help the company to get to a self-sustaining stage, for example? So I think when the market potential is just very little, then and it becomes very unlikely that the company can build a self-sustaining profitable business, then it does hurt the company. But if the company can make a case that yes, this is going to get us to a place where we can generate some meaningful revenue, build a self-sustaining for-profit business, I think that's pretty much all we're looking for. I've had a company that had a market potential of probably about $30-40 million, and they were going to have some significant impact for that particular field in the neonatal space. And we funded them, and they were able to work on their project. And eventually, the company was actually bought out by another company, so it was a successful exit, but maybe considered a successful exit for that company. So there has to be something there for people to believe that this is a for-profit company, because that's what it is. It's not a nonprofit that we're supporting. So I would say if it's a $2 million market potential, it may you may want to see what other ways that you can expand it to. If that's the initial market, and then it'll open up doors for a much bigger market, then maybe it's sufficient. But that whole plan of how you're going to proceed with this is going to be important.
Great. And kind of on that same topic, we have another question that's somewhat similar. It says the NSF outlook seems very similar to the criterion for angel investing, which simply does not bridge the valley of death for truly new deep tech. How does NSF envision that companies bridge the rest of this gap for truly deep technologies that may be critical for technology advancement, but are still not close to financial break even?
Yeah, and I think it's tough, and it also depends on the topic too. So I know for most of my companies, I mean, it'll take many years before they can get to that point of being able to generate meaningful revenue. So yes, I think to some extent, a lot of the things that we look for maybe tend to be very similar to what an angel investor may look for. But I think where we typically come in with our money is it's typically pre-angel investments. So most of my companies that are funded through phase one, they are still trying to raise money. They have not received any money yet at this point. But it's definitely not unusual for me to see some of my phase one companies trying to transition to a phase two, have phase two proposals submitted, for them to have some form of investment commitment from, sometimes it's in the six-figure angel investment, sometimes it's a little more. So I think that's the way kind of we look at it. Yes, there will be a lot of things, additional things that a company may need to do, depending on what technology that the company is developing. They may have to seek maybe additional grants in some cases through other agencies like NIH or DoD. They also have some additional grants that they can provide. We have some companies that'll get to a point of being able to find a strategic partner. We've had a company that had a phase one project initially submitted because their strategic partner specifically said, hey, we would love to be able to see some mouse data for the specific type of application that they had in mind. And that's what they submitted. They said, there are so many other things that we would like to do. Once we are able to raise private investment, it's sufficient private investment to be financially stable. We would love to be able to do all those things, but right now, the most critical milestones for us is to do this mouse work because that's going to get us in front of these big guys. And that other company pretty much said, with positive outcome, we would love to be able to bring you in to have a discussion and see whether there's a way that we might be able to work together. So I think with this grant, it's important to keep in mind that we're not hoping to see the company getting to the kind of financially stable, generating significant revenue stage with this grant. In most cases, it's not going to be enough to get there, but our hope is that it's going to give companies a chance to be able to people like private investors and strategic partners and continue the business.
Great. Perfect. And then,
Right.
so we've got two more questions.
Okay.
And then we'll kind of wrap up. So the first is, are proposals reviewed after the submission window closes, or are they reviewed as received?
Yeah, so this process may be a little different depending on where things are, but generally, we try to move proposals as they come in. And my goal with all of my proposals that I receive, my goal is to get to the final decision within 6 months of proposal submission. So, I have, for example, I have a panel later this month which included proposals that I received up until about a week ago. So I'll try to plan it that way, but but sometimes we don't have enough proposals to group into a panel, so they have to be held a little bit before they get processed. But again, our goal is to get to the final decision within 6 months. But when the next solicitation gets published, things may be a little different. So you may want to take a look at it and feel free to reach out anytime if you have any specific questions about that. But there is a small difference with the next solicitation. So stay tuned.
Great. And then the last question that we've got for today is, what kind of advantages does the phase 2 program offer? Are there introductions to potential commercial partners, third-party engineering firms that can help build pilot plants, etc.?
Yeah, so we don't, I guess, make those introductions separately. And we used to have phase 2 conferences where everyone got together in Atlanta, and we used to have everyone present a poster. We used to have investors walking through. So there were some matching going on during that process too. So, but we don't have those type of. I mean, all of our phase 2 grantees conference is done virtually. So we don't have those things. But we some of the things that we have. So for example, we have that TABA fund up to 50K that the company submits along with the phase 2 proposal. Companies often use that to hire somebody to help them to better understand the regulatory path to market, for example. In some cases, how to strengthen their IP protection. In some cases, with the business development or fundraising, somebody who's going to help them to do those things. So there are these little things here and there that that may come up that will be helpful. And we also have other supplements. So for example, we have this supplement called TECP supplement, and that's intended for companies to form partnerships. We have one company, so for example, a company working on a specific technology for an application, all of a sudden they're talking to different people, and one potential partner or strategic partner comes along and says, hey, that IP is really interesting. We want to see if it's compatible with our IP. And if it works, we would love to be able to license it from you and potentially offer it for our market. So uh, they might be able to apply for this specific supplement called TECP supplement. As a result of this supplemental project, they may end in a joint development agreement of some sort or a license agreement to help them to generate more revenue from the technology that they may have. So there are things that'll come up, and depending on the specific situation, those are some of the things that I can think of. But there are obviously other uh, variety of different types of opportunities that may pop up, and whatever comes up, we're always there too. So you can always reach out. We have multiple discussions with our portfolio companies and see if there's any way that we can help them in some way, because we want to be able to see our companies be able to successfully not only complete the project but grow as for-profit entities. So we'll do what we can, although we don't do one-on-one matching like the hand holding or bringing them to specific investors or service provider. We're not allowed to do that, but we'll do what we can along the way.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure,
I know this is a lot of really great information for everyone on and for me as well. So always good to get updates.
sure,
Um, and yeah, so for everyone else, I will be sending out, there will be a follow-up um, with the recording of today and also some more information on some of our other upcoming programming that we have. So as I mentioned this morning, we do quite a bit of work with people applying, for submitting their proposals to for SBIRs, STTRs, and especially a lot to NSF. So if anyone is looking for extra assistance there or anything too, they can always reach out to me individually or through the TechSource program. And we do have some other webinars coming up with a few other agencies, including I know Navy and the Department of Energy as well. So, but yeah, thank you so much, Henry, for joining us today and
sure.
for coming to chat and answer questions.
Sure. Thanks for having me. And feel free to reach out anytime if you have any questions.
Oh, perfect. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Ending 3 minutes early, so it's perfect timing. And hope everyone has a great rest of their Tuesday.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.